On this episode of Purposely Curious, we discuss some interesting Halloween historical facts. I myself learned a lot about how some Halloween traditions came to be. We also discuss some of our favorite Halloween memories growing up. I hope you're ready for this year's Halloween season. So get your costume ready and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Bonjour, Marie. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I like that. That sounded really nice. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Just had a busy, rough week, but surviving, doing okay. So I'm happy. It's fall, finally. Fall weather, you know? The air's getting thin.
Yeah. For those of you guys who don't know, we live in the greater Los Angeles area. So it's usually very Mediterranean-ish weather year-round, I would say, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this year has been kind of cold compared to our standards. Probably not to any standards of the East Coast or anything or other countries. But
right.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like fall.
Finally.
So we're really excited about that. Yeah. Do you have any fall decorations up?
I don't. I try to not draw attention, you know, only because I'm not in one place, you know, always, you know. But that's the thing I miss, you know, like when I have like stability, when like I'm, you know, when I'm not just watching my friend's house, but when she's home, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, let's decorate, you know, like, hey, let's plan for trick-or-treaters. Let's, you know, let's burn the fire pit, you know, let's barbecue, you know, and it's like, I don't do any of that because I don't want to draw attention when I'm not around, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's the sad part, you know?
Oh, well, you excited at least for Halloween?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night at home, I'm sure, you know? I'm not one to go out. Like I spent so many years in radio and parties and going out and costume balls and this and Hollywood and all that. And I'm just like, no, I'm over that, you know? It's like, you know, been there, done that, seen it all. And I like to just stay home and have fun at home, you know?
Yeah.
Carve a jack-o'-lantern maybe. If kids show up, pass out candy. And if not, I'm going to eat it all. You know? How about you?
Well, usually pre-COVID, I'd go to my friend's house who would have an annual Halloween like party.
Nice.
So it's small, nothing crazy, but that was always exciting. But this year it falls on a Sunday. I'm not really sure yet what I'm doing. I am kind of like fully booked the next few weekends, but not that weekend. So I'm not really sure. So I might just hang at home. I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah. So did you watch the finale of Ted Lasso?
I did.
What did you think?
I thought it was good, but I have a really big problem with the whole season. And I don't know if I'm just the only one who's thinking about this, but the whole season, every episode felt scotch taped together, like they don't belong, you know?
They meaning?
Like the storyline was not one cohesive storyline. And I'll tell you one example. Coach Nate. Okay? Wasn't there an episode, or please tell me if I had a fever dream and I made this up. I swear there was an episode where he assaulted one of the players or one of the staff members, like fucking like beat him, like hit him on the head or something. And they never came back to that. Like the following episode is like, oh, let's do a Coach Beard episode where he's dancing and going to clubs. And then it's like, oh, let's do another episode about something else. And then it's like, okay, clearly his character has some anger management issues and they just never came back to that. And I was kind of like, okay, this is weird. Like there's something wrong with the season. I don't know what's going on. Did you remember that?
I think I understand what you're saying. I think what they started off with all the characters' plot lines together, right? Like the show. And then I think there was a few episodes where they tried to go more in depth to other characters.
Right.
Where other characters maybe didn't come out. So I understand what you're saying. But I think overall we see the progression of him turning into an asshole and with the season finale.
Yeah, but he actually hit somebody. That's the thing, though. He actually assaulted someone, and that's where I was like, oh shit! Like, you know, like I want to see next episode where he gets worse or he gets fired or something, you know. And nothing happened. It was just like, oh, let's have Coach Nate win the game, come up with the play, and I'm like, what? What did I miss? Like, you know, I was trying to figure out if I missed an episode in there. So I don't know. I felt that was kind of weird.
Yeah. I think too, if maybe what they were trying to show is how everyone doesn't see certain red flags.
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own fucking problems. Do you know what I mean? So that could have been what was happening there. Because if you look at when they focused on those episodes where they focus on each like character, it's basically their problems. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
I did like that
next season should be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I did like that they had some fun episodes. I really liked the Christmas episode because it was, you know, basically a parody on Love Actually. And then I like the character of the psychologist, you know, and her goodbye episode was fun because that was a parody on Good Will Hunting, you know, where she's all like, they're saying goodbye with the notes. And she's all like, oh, son of a bitch, stole my line. You know, I kind of laughed. I'm like, oh, it's Good Will Hunting. That's cool. So they did a lot of fun stuff, which I really enjoyed. And the team is back on track. That's great. You know, but like I said, it just kind of felt weird with some of the things. Like, so I don't know. Yeah. I wonder what those decisions were, you know?
Yeah, I think they were just trying, maybe it wasn't the smoothest, but I think it was trying to set up season 3, which is going to be a rivalry.
Yes, that for sure.
What I do like, you know, I'm a book nerd. I follow all these like publishing houses and authors that I enjoy on Instagram, and Penguin has noticed they're tagging all the books that they've published, that because they're always reading books on that show. So there's even the books that they're reading have something to do with the episode. It's so crazy.
Oh,
like
yeah,
they've
for sure.
thought totally so much about it. But one of the things that all of my friends who watch it were like upset about Nate. And it's just to see the progression of the hair turning gray. It's like we saw a new Marvel villain come out of nowhere. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm going to rewatch this season just to make sure I didn't miss anything, because it did not feel organic. It felt like it was like they kind of skipped, you know, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Maybe it's because of COVID or, you know, something, you know, that didn't work out the way it did, but it was still a fun season. I still enjoyed it. I laughed, you know, it always makes me laugh, so that's a good thing. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I look forward to season 3. I look forward to seeing who they bring in as new characters. You know, so that should be fun.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. So interesting. So, do you know what we want to talk about this week on the episode?
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about
You've used that before. No, you got to come up with newer stuff.
I can't even sing. My singing sucks. I wish I could sing.
Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be.
See, that's okay. I don't even know that line. So, thank you for saving me.
So we're going to talk about Halloween. Woo. Would you say Halloween is your favorite holiday?
Spooky.
Being in the horror culture?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you know, for the obvious reasons. But of course I enjoy Christmas and stuff because of the end of the year stuff, you know, but Halloween has always been special to me because you know, it's one of those things where I don't know, I feel like it's magical. Like even when I was a kid, I always thought of it as a magical holiday, even though it's not a holiday, but you know, it's one of those like magical times of the year. And then as a kid, you don't understand why. All you know, it's like, cool, get dressed up and let's go get candy, you know? But, you know, it just never went away. Like, if we were living in the 70s or 60s, people would say, grow up, you're not a kid anymore. And I think there's just way more people these days that celebrate Halloween ongoing throughout their life. Like they're, you know, older, and even in their 70s or 80s, they still dress up, even if they just pass out candy, you know? So it's still a magical holiday for me, you know? How about you?
It's not one of my favorites, but it's definitely one that I enjoy. Just because I feel like it's like the beginning of the holiday season for me.
Right.
So I definitely enjoy it. Definitely Halloween, for all you guys listening in other parts of the world, has become very commercial in the US and in the world with social media. When I, maybe even 10 years ago, talking to people from other countries, it was like an American thing for adults to dress up.
Right.
It was like not as a big deal. But now with social media, and everyone kind of being on the same universal wavelength, because we're all listening and watching the same stuff, right?
Right.
It seems to be like a dress up for other countries now. Like people do it. But I did want to kind of go into the history of Halloween, not so much in depth, and I'm sure you please add any information you want to add. But it was called All Hallows Day. And that basically it means All Saints Day, right?
Right.
So Halloween was All Hallows Eve.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting. And it's definitely, has its origins in the Celtic, ancient Ireland, Britain history. But it was basically All Hallows Day. Do you remember that? It's kind of snowballed after that into many crazy things.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an ancient Celtic. It came from the ancient Celtic tribes of Ireland.
Celtic. Mm-hmm.
Of Ireland, and the interesting thing about that is that it predates like Christianity by 2,000 years, probably. That they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not have any written history. Everything we know about them was because it was orally passed down. They only told stories. And they passed on traditions, but nothing was written down. So the ancient Celtic tribes were a very mysterious bunch, And back then they celebrated, it's spelled Samhain. Have you seen that?
Mm.
But it's pronounced Samhain.
Oh,
and
really?
It's a tradition that's at least 2,000 years old, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you go back to those times, and that's when they would sacrifice humans. So in the Samhain tradition, they would sacrifice humans, and it wasn't known why. People were thinking like, oh, is it because of mystical powers or witchcraft or something? And it's like, no, they did it willingly. It was like an honor to be sacrificed. And it was basically to provide good crops for your farm, good growth and good harvest. Now, the interesting thing is there's actual archaeological evidence about that. You ever hear about this?
No, I haven't. Please fill me in.
Yeah, so get this. This is how they found out that people were willingly doing this on because they wanted to. Mm-hmm. They found people's remains, okay? And they were dressed well. Now, the interesting thing is they found cake pieces in their stomach. Okay?
Cake?
Cake.
What?
Now, the pieces of cake had charcoal markings on them. And if the person who got that piece of cake with the charcoal markings, that meant that they won and they were chosen for the sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually found that in the actual stomachs of the remains of these bodies that they found, So that pretty much, tells more of the story of like, yeah, these people went willingly. Like it was an honor, like they wanted to win, So yeah, so all these years people thought it was a sacrifice because you were bad or evil. And it's like, no, it's the opposite, because people wanted to be sacrificed to be a good person, to give back so that their crops could grow that year,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really crazy tradition. And it wasn't until like the 7th century AD, this is, in the time of Christianity, when the Christian missionaries came to Ireland, and that's when they started to bring the traditions of the Celtics and all that stuff into the modern era,
Yeah, because apparently in the 7th century, All Saints Day, right, which was Hallows Day, was in May 13th. And they actually changed it to November 1st.
Yes.
And then again, remember, Hallows Day is All Saints Day, and Halloween is Hallows Eve,
right?
All Saints Eve. So it's crazy how it's kind of like looking to the future, right? It's like seen as two different things, right? All Saints Day Dia de los Muertos. Like it all comes together, right?
Right.
And then there's Halloween, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But obviously this didn't happen overnight. So
No.
yeah, I didn't realize it went that back. Like,
Yeah, it goes
to the
back
Celts.
thousands of years. It's crazy. It's crazy. Do you know what the symbol is of Halloween? Like what character is the one symbol? Can you think of one?
Well, I'm thinking in modern times. Are you thinking in historical?
No, just think of it in general. Like what do you think of when I say Halloween? What's the one character you think of?
Pumpkin.
Okay.
That's just me.
think of a human.
Oh, a human. Oh my God. I don't know. I feel terrible.
Ghosts, witches,
Ghosts?
witches.
Yes.
So
Yes.
witches, okay? It's become like the modern like symbol for Halloween, right?
Correct.
Like, no matter what, you know. Now the interesting thing is that from the 16th century, okay, and before, there is no mention of witches and Halloween together ever. So there's no record of witches and Halloween together as of 1580 and before. So we're only talking like what, 400, 500 years ago? So there's no record of witches, okay? The interesting thing is that it was King James of Scotland who started the witch trials. And he's the one who associated that the big Sabbath of witches is on All Saints Eve. And that's why the holiday was like kind of gravitated towards like, oh, let's move it to November, you know, November 1st, you know. And also at that time, you know, King James, of course, gave us the King James version of the Bible, you know, his interpretation of it. But also there was a back then, I think the first known writings of a witch was a 19th century author, Nathaniel Hawthorne. He wrote a story called Young Goodman Brown, and it was a young man who finds a whole town full of witches. So I think that's one of the first times we see that in literature. Now, we actually don't see a witch until 1939. Do you know where that was?
1939?
Yes.
Weren't the Salem trials before that?
Oh, yeah, there were like 600 years before that, or 300 years before that, yeah. But we actually don't see a witch in pop culture until 1939. Do you remember?
The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, that is right.
Ah, ding, ding, ding.
Yes. So the Wizard of Oz is the classic image of a witch, okay? Now, the interesting thing, before the Wizard of Oz, okay, before the witch that we know from the Wizard of Oz, every time you would see a witch in art or literature, the witch was always portrayed dressed in red. So Wizard of Oz gave us the modern day look of a witch that we know of.
Oof.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah. Now, when you talk about these before Wizard of Oz, were they like had pretty faces, or did they make witches look like horrendous?
It was mixed, because witches back then, to this day even, were known as the manipulators. You know, they could be the sexy, you know, woman who would appeal to the married man, for example, and he would be under the spell and not see her true ugliness. You know, if she was ugly, you know, all he would see is beauty. There's actually a really good movie called The Witch that came out like, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. That movie does a really good you know, they do a really good example of showing you that exactly, you know, where a young boy and a girl are taking care of their young baby brother, and they literally blink and the baby brother disappears into the woods, you know. So they're both feeling guilty. So eventually the brother goes to look for it, but he encounters this beautiful woman dressed in dark clothing with huge boobs, you know, that looks amazing, you know, but she was seducing the kid, you know.
I thought it was funny that you just had to throw that in there.
No, because it's part of the storyline.
I'm just teasing you. Teasing you.
It's part of the story where he's seducing her with her looks, but she ends up killing the kid. She ends up, you know, infecting him, you know, and possessing him and stuff. So, but the thing is, the kid doesn't see an ugly witch. He sees a beautiful woman, you know. So that's classically done, I guess, in a lot of witch tales, you know. But back to the other symbol you mentioned before the witch. You mentioned what?
The pumpkin.
The pumpkin. Now, more specifically, the jack-o'-lantern, because that predates the pumpkin, right? Do you know where that came from? That tradition came from?
No.
So that comes from, back in the Irish, country, right? And there's an interesting folk tale because we're talking about a jack-o'-lantern, right? That's when you carve a pumpkin, you put a candle in it or you put a light in it, we call it jack-o'-lantern. The folk tale is about a guy named Jack. You ever heard the story of Jack?
Probably as a kid, but I feel like right now I'm drawing a blank. So please tell me.
So Jack was a bad guy. He was a bad dude. Okay. He was a blacksmith. Okay. Like back then, the blacksmiths were, the scientists of the day, they were like fix stuff and build stuff and, work with metal and all that stuff, but Jack was a bad guy. Okay. So he tricked the devil 3 times. Okay. So he met with the devil 3 times. He was, it was time for him to die. And he tricked the devil 3 times out of taking his soul. So the devil did not take his soul 3 times. So of course he was not going to go to heaven. The story goes that he, because he was a bad guy. So he was going to go to hell. And the devil met with him and said, I'm not even going to let you in because you tricked me 3 times. But I'm going to take pity on you. And I'm going to give you a burning coal as ember to light your way as your spirit is going to live forever and wander the earth. So he put this glowing coal into a container, into like a box or something, and to carry it to light his way. And that's the story of Jack-o'-lantern. That's why the Irish would carve. What would they carve?
Pumpkin.
No. Do you know why? Do you know why there's no pumpkins?
No.
Because in Ireland there's no pumpkins.
Oh, okay. I learned something new.
So yeah, I didn't know that because carving pumpkins is a U.S. tradition. Okay, not Ireland.
Oh, okay.
There's no pumpkins in Ireland. So they carve turnips, and they would carve a face out of a turnip. And they would put something to light it, either coal or a candle or some kind of light, to light it. And the crazy thing is, this is in the 17th, 18th, 19th century, they would carve jack-o'-lanterns, the Irish people, pranksters, they'd carve it out of turnips, on the Halloween night, on these days. And they would place these at the end of the road. Like they would, make it as tall as a human, for example, and they would just put it there, Now, have you ever seen what a carved turnip looks like?
No, I haven't.
They're fucking scary.
Yeah.
Because because a pumpkin looks happy, it's orange. You're like, oh, look at the pumpkin. Turnips are dark because, they have a darker skin color, like purple, greenish, like.
Okay.
So they kind of hide in the shadows, So when you look at a carved pumpkin lit, it looks creepy. So that's how they would prank people and scare people, is they would put those at the end of the road, and when you would walk and you would turn the corner, you would think there's somebody over there hiding or waiting for you, and sure enough, it was just the carved turnip,
Yeah. So I just looked it up right now, and I see what you're saying.
Kind of weird, huh?
Yeah. The colors are not, we're so I'm speaking for myself. All I kept thinking about was pumpkin, Yeah. Yeah. Carved turnips. Very interesting. I didn't know that.
I seriously want to carve them. Like if I had time this year, I would carve turnips and just put them everywhere. Like screw people. You do pumpkins, I'll do turnips and see which one's scarier,
Yeah. Well, from what I'm seeing here, probably turnips for sure. Yeah.
So that tradition came to the Americas here in the U.S. in 1840s. And the only reason why it came over here, because that's when the Irish came over here. The Irish came over here in the 1840s because they were trying to escape famine. They had problems growing crops and food and all that over there, and European diseases and all that. So they came over here, and they brought that tradition of carving, turnips over here. And of course, over here, there's no turnips, there's pumpkins, and they found the pumpkins to be easier and much better. So that's why we carve jack-o'-lanterns from pumpkins.
Oh, we have to give thanks to the Irish for all this.
Yeah, pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. Wow, I've learned a lot already. Yeah. So I'm definitely naive in this department.
No, there's just a lot of really cool Halloween history out there that I know some scholars have been digging deep, and that's where these stories come from. That's what, now what's the most favorite thing to do on Halloween night?
For people?
Yes.
Dress up.
Okay, when did that begin? And what country?
I want to say the US, but I'm probably wrong. I've been wrong. I'm like 0 for 10 already.
You're wrong, actually, because you are right. It was here.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So isn't it
Shocking.
weird? No, but isn't it weird though that these traditions come from Europe, come from Scotland, come from Ireland, maybe bits and pieces from Britain. They come here, and yet there's no dressing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Why do we dress up for Halloween? And trust me, I didn't know this because I got this. I knew this all my life, and this is wrong. Okay. So I will tell you at the end why we dress up for Halloween, and where we got it wrong. But first, I'll tell you that it was 1933 when this started. So again, not that old. We're talking like 90 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like almost 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there was an incident called Black Halloween, 1933. You ever heard of Black Halloween?
No, I have not.
So, of course, Halloween, those times were to play pranks, right? And trick people. Remember, it started with the turnips, right? And, it escalated. It became like, let's burn shit down. Like, let's knock stuff over. Let's knock over outhouses, on farms, and tip over, anything. Like, let's set things on fire, okay? So it was
like a riot?
Yeah, but think of it like everywhere, okay?
In the country, or it was just in certain towns, or
yeah, in different parts of the country, different parts. I mean, you could say where there were European settlers, like Irish settlers and all that. It probably became more prevalent, and it's like, okay, this is too much. It was too much destruction. They were setting fires, giving up, doing pranks to people, and this is where things changed. 1933, okay, because a community. Think of like your HOA community full of houses, your neighborhood. They got together and they said, hey, why don't we try buying off the pranksters? But how do we do that? How do we stop pranksters from burning shit down and breaking stuff and all that? Any guesses?
Trick or treat?
But before trick or treat. Before trick or treat. You're very close to that, but very close before trick or treat. What else do you do at Halloween? If you're not trick-or-treating, you're at where?
The pub. I don't know.
You're at a party.
I've been watching too much old school. I'm at the pub.
That's funny.
At a party. Okay. Same thing. I'm on the right path.
Yeah, you are. So they tried to buy off the pranksters by throwing parties. So the neighborhood would throw parties, okay? Now remember, you're walking in just in your regular school clothes, right? Or whatever. What do you get at the party? Well, you get costumes. They supplied the costumes. This is the first time they cut out bed sheets and made you a ghost. Or they made you a creepy looking scarecrow. And this was all done by the neighborhood people. And one house would give you the costumes, right? Then they would tell you to go to a different house. And you know what they would give you?
Drinks.
Maybe drinks, but also treats. Maybe fruits, maybe candy. So eventually this caught on because after that night, there was no more destruction. And that's when they said, okay, we got this, And in 1936, it was the first time that it was printed in magazines as trick or treat. So that's when the tradition started of trick or treating. Trick or treat.
Wow. I had no idea.
You go to a house, you say trick or treat, right? And nobody's going to say trick, everybody's just going to give you the treats, But, back in the day, if you didn't, then you could play a prank on the person, But it was interesting because it was, this is 1936. So in the 1941, when World War II broke out for the U.S. and they joined the war and all that, trick-or-treating kind of died off a little bit because sugar was scarce during the war. You couldn't get sugar. And because of that, candies weren't being made as much. So that became a problem, right? But the second the war ended, the second World War II ended after 4 years, for the US, of course, Halloween exploded. It was like party central. It's like trick or treat, it's like parties. It's like, let's pull some pranks. Let's have some fun. Let's go out in the streets, So that is the start of like the explosion of Halloween and trick or treating and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So as a kid, did they ever tell you why you would dress up and go out trick or treating?
They could have, but I just don't remember. I don't know if it's because it's been so long.
Right.
That I don't remember a lot of what we were taught in school about Halloween.
I was always taught by everybody, from my parents to school teachers to, even the church, everybody that would tell you that the reason why you dress up and go trick-or-treating is because it's the one night where, the other side, I remember I said Halloween night's typically the night where the veil is thin and they, the undead can cross over, right? They can come visit and they're known to, come by and scare people and play tricks and all that, So the reason why you dress up is to scare them.
Mm-hmm.
So you dress up to scare off the evil spirits and you get rewarded, by getting candy. Now, what I didn't know is that I believed that all these years, and that is actually not true. That was never part of the lore. That was never part of like what the reasons are. The reasons why we dressed up is going back to those parties to ward off the pranksters, the Black Halloween. That's the reason why we dress up. It basically was it was an excuse to, hey, let's not riot. But guess what? We'll have fun. We'll do it indoors, party here, party that house, party at this house, and you're going to get candy and drinks and, dress up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why that we dress up.
Yeah. That's crazy because it's such a big thing now. It's, obviously people want dress for their kids and they want their kids to have fun, but definitely it's really nice to see adults still doing it.
Right.
And again, pre-COVID and looking forward to it, I feel like it's still kind of like a weird phase as far as how much fun do we want to have.
Right.
But definitely now everyone's getting into the spirit. You're seeing it online. I'm sure you the people that you follow, you're starting to see more posts.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Now, definitely, like I said, it's been a huge American thing in the sense of making it what it is as far as a holiday. So now everyone is starting to put on movies to get to prepare themselves for the end of the month. Are there any Halloween movies that you just always watch every year yourself?
It's interesting. There are some that I avoid because they just don't make sense to me. Like the ones with, with extreme violence and all that. And I'm like, that to me, that's not scary because that's, that could be real life scary for some people that have had attacks and home invasion and all that shit, like it's awful, but a good supernatural movie. And of course, I always go back to the classic 1978 Halloween movie, and even though it's a simple story of, this guy stalking, babysitters on Halloween night, so I like that it takes place on Halloween night, and that's the key. It's Halloween night. So when I see a good Halloween movie that takes place on Halloween, like I love that. So I typically watch that one, and I love watching the movie Trick or Treat. It's a fun horror comedy, where it also takes place on Halloween night, but there's 4 different stories. So it's like 4 different little movies with different people. But at the end of the movie, it all comes together as one, it all makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
So those are some fun ones, that I like to watch. Gets me in the spirit,
Yeah. As a kid, did you dress up a lot?
I did. I think up until high school, I stopped. Because, once you're in high school, you just get busy with sports and social life and all that. That is just, died off for me. But I did, and it was always fun to see what my parents could come up with in terms of creative costumes, And at my elementary school, for example, they'd have the Halloween parade, and everybody who dressed up have to go and march in the circle. Then they would pick out, pick out these kids with the best costumes for the best contest, the winners and all that, So I don't think I ever won anything. I think I might have been picked like third place or something, but those were fun. Those were fun times, I mean, again, going back to the innocence of Halloween, because those were the days. Do you remember dressing up as a kid in Halloween and going out trick-or-treating?
I do remember vaguely, and I'm sure for some of you guys, it's like you remember certain years more than others.
Right.
So there's 2 years I remember, and that was one where I was a clown, and I met up with all my cousins. And then the other one I remember is when I was Snow White.
Oh,
and
nice.
I remember because I have a lot of pictures. My dad used to be like a photographer.
Yeah.
So he used to like take pictures of me, and he would pose me like, I was Snow White, and I was laughing so hard with my 2 front teeth missing. So.
Well, that's funny. You have those photos still?
Oh, I still have them.
Oh, nice.
So I said I could share them. But after so I went to school near downtown LA.
Right.
So there was Mount St. Mary's College just next door to the Catholic school that I went to, and they would host like a trick-or-treating night, and so my parents would walk us through there, and we would get candy. So it was something I looked forward to, and sometimes our teachers were there. So I have a memory of my first grade teacher, Sister Donna, who was there, and I have a picture of me and her, and I think she was a clown that year, and I was Snow White. But yeah, I do have some childhood memories. And then like yourself, I think I also stopped dressing up in high school. It wasn't cool, right? At the time. And then as an adult, me and my friends and family just started dressing up again. And it was a lot of fun. So I feel like we're enjoying it as adults just as much now as when we were kids.
Yeah, definitely. I think the last time I really, really did something crazy, I wanted to, you watch these YouTube videos and TV specials, how they do special effects, makeup and everything,
Mm-hmm.
So I went to there's a store in Burbank called Cinema Secrets. You ever heard of that store or been there?
Is it by Portos?
Not too far away.
Okay.
It's not too far away. And it's a store, supposedly, I don't believe it, but supposedly it's where all the Hollywood people go buy their special effects, makeup and creams and all that stuff, So the stuff was not cheap,
Mm-hmm.
But this one year I thought, you know what? I want to do it. I want to go all out, So I bought a gallon of liquid latex. And it, it's like that weird like skin tone color, like pink, peach, And of course it smells awful because it has some kind of solvent, in it to dry,
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to look up, tutorials like how to apply it to your face and how to use tissue paper. Like if you take tissue paper and crumple it up and put it like on your nose and cover it with latex, you can make your nose look like scarred, So some really cool effects. The problem is that I found out the very extremely hard way, because remember, I did this twice. I did it one day as practice, and then I took it off, and then I did it on Halloween night, okay? I did it twice. I found out the very hard way that because of using so much latex, I became allergic to latex.
Mm.
So by the end of Halloween night, my face was red. Like crazy red. It was just my friends were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, it's burning. Dude, what's going on?"
Yeah.
It was pretty funny, but that's the last time. And of course, lesson learned, because I'm like, shit, this is serious. That's why makeup people know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
They probably had layers of makeup foundation and stuff before they put that stuff on,
Yeah. So now do you have in your chart, I'm speaking as a nurse, allergy is latex?
It's not on my chart, but it's something that I bring up because it came back to haunt me in the lab environment. Because when I was training for stem cells, they would make you wear latex gloves, but they also made me sign a 27-page paper that would explain that, don't worry, if you're not allergic to latex, you will be. and it could lead to cancer eventually, you know? So I was just like, fuck, like really?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
eventually I, after like a week or so, my hands would start to bleed. Like they would be itchy and red and swollen. And then I was like, oh, sweet, they're bleeding, you know? And that's when I realized I can't wear those gloves. So I had to switch to nitrile, you know?
Yeah. I don't, I'm not allergic to latex, but I definitely, as a nurse, try not to use them. Yeah. Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things I didn't know that I thought you either are allergic or not. And they were like, no, you don't understand. Everybody will become allergic if you overuse it, you know? And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. So do you feel, obviously now it's still in a pandemic. Do you feel now with the pandemic, hopefully with time, because I think they say on average, historically, they last 3 to 5 years. People are going to really look into the holidays with more, enthusiasm.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and this is like cyclical. This happened before, you know. If you look back 100 years ago to the 1918, the Spanish flu, you know, that pandemic, you know, after that was over with, like that's when people started to get together again and through the biggest parties.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, of course, there were pranks back then before it became actual Halloween parties in 33 and all that. But, you know, it showed that when you isolate people that long and there's death and famine and all that, when it's over, people come together bigger and better, you know, to celebrate, you know?
Yeah. So with Halloween, we have to talk about Dia de los Muertos.
Yes.
Yeah, because Dia de los Muertos, for those of you listening who don't speak Spanish, is the Day of the Dead, which is basically, it all stems and comes from that old Irish, Celtic, historic concept, right? But every country has kind of made it their own, given it its own touch, or religions.
And it is interesting that Dia de los Muertos is the one thing, okay, that is Halloween without the Celtic side. So it's kind of like its own tradition, but it still intersects with Halloween when you think about it, you know? And it's because it came from, you know, basically central Mexico, from, you know, the Aztecs and the Mayans, you know, like those are, you know, peoples that celebrated, you know, these kind of traditions back in the dead, you know, of the dead, how they would celebrate the dead, you know?
Yeah. And I like it too because a lot of movies for children are trying to educate on the Dia de los Muertos, in that it's the Day of the Dead, but it's a way to honor the dead, those who were our loved ones, and not forget them, you know, try to keep them alive in our hearts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one of the things that, you know, back when the conquistadors, you know, from España, when they came over, you know, Hernán Cortés, and they defeated the Aztecs, right? And the interesting thing about that is the Aztecs, again, like the Irish Celtic, you know, had no written language. So there's nothing we can refer back to the Aztecs and say, hey, this is why, this is how, you know. It was all spoken daily from person to person, you know. And even though that the Spanish conquered the Aztecs and they brought Christianity, right, to the Western world here, the interesting thing is that the traditions of Dia de los Muertos were adopted by the church, and they still continue today.
Mm-hmm.
In Latino America, you know, in Latin America, if that's something you celebrate, you know. And the interesting thing, what I'm finding is that people are so intrigued by it because it's something different, right? Mm-hmm. It's the face makeup, it's the costumes you put on, it's the sugar skull makeup, you know. It's the ofrendas. You build the ofrendas. You ever seen those ofrendas in real life?
Can you tell me what that means?
It's ofrendas. It's in English. It means offering.
Okay.
So you build a shrine, and you can build it anywhere. You can build it, you know, in your home living room. Typically, people do that, you know, and it's for a loved one. It's for the loved ones that have passed on. So, like, if you have a grandmother, a father, a mother, brother, anybody who's passed on, you build an ofrenda, like an altar, and you put their pictures there and their favorite things about them. You know, maybe their favorite photos, their favorite snacks, you know, maybe ticket stubs, concert stubs, you know, you light candles, you know, and you decorate it. You make it, you know, if you could find sugar skulls, you decorate sugar skulls and the typical calaveras, you know, skeletons, you know, which are, you know, very, you know, Dia de los Muertos, like Latino America, you know, Mexico, you know, decor, you know, in those colors, the bright colors, you know. So it's something you could do there, but they also do them at cemeteries, you know. So people actually go all out, you know, in cemeteries and build the altar, their shrine, you know, right on top of, you know, this deceased person's headstone, or, you know, and you know who does it big every year is the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And people go there and decorate and build these shrines, you know, for people. And you could actually go and walk around. You could actually, like, on those nights of Dia de los Muertos, you can actually walk around, and you can actually see them, you know, and you can actually, you know, people just go just to remember them. Because remember, the thought is very much like Halloween tradition, is that the veil is thin, that the people who've departed can cross over for one night to be with you, you know. And that's why they go, because they feel like there's energy in the air. They feel like they're there with you. And so, and you know, maybe they love Tommy's Burgers or Dodger Dogs or Taco Bell. And people bring them that and they put it right on the ofrenda, right on the shrine, you know. Their favorite foods, their favorite memories, you know. And it's a very lighthearted celebration. It's peaceful and it's fun. It's somber, but it's not sad. It's fun. You know, because sad is like, you know, death, you know, but you're celebrating their life, really. So, and it's beautiful. Like I said, the colors are vivid, bright colors typically, and people go, you know, they do all the costumes and everything, and it's a fun experience. And it's, when the weather allows, like hopefully it's not, you know, raining and crazy, you know, like, but if the weather is just cool and it's nice, like I always tell people, you got to go out, you got to go check it out, you know. I always hear words from different cemeteries that are doing that, and I go, you got to go check it out. And I see some beautiful photos, you know. And you can Google that. You can Google ofrendas and Dia de los Muertos, and you could see many photos people take at cemeteries at night. And it's not creepy. It's not scary. It's a beautiful experience. And a really good primer, a really good place to get an example of this, believe it or not, is the Pixar Disney movie Coco. You saw that movie, right?
Yeah, who didn't, right? I saw it maybe months, or like, because people kept talking about it, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch it, you know, and I loved it. Yeah. The message was beautiful.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And they really did it right, you know, because they really paid honor to the traditions, and they showed you what it looks like, and the sugar skulls and the costumes and why you do it. You know, it's like I said, it's not a sad thing. It's more to pay tribute to your loved ones and friends, and, you know, in a very quiet way, but also, you know, happy, you know.
Yeah. It's crazy because my immediate family, and that's why I was asking you, what did ofrenda mean? We didn't really celebrate Halloween nor Dia de los Muertos. It was something that, well, we celebrated Halloween as kids, obviously.
Right.
But Dia de los Muertos in my family, we did not celebrate whatsoever. So it was something that I learned maybe in my 20s about, and started to educate myself because of my friends that are Mexicanos. You know what I mean? Like, I was clueless. So I've definitely learned a lot, and the movie definitely showed me more about it. So I definitely see it with new eyes, and, you know, the tradition, to me, it makes sense. You don't want to forget those loved ones, you know. With every generation that passes, people pass, right? And are forgotten, right? So it's sad in that sense. But at least in the moment, the family that you leave behind can hopefully, you know, remember you and keep your memory alive.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's also a cultural thing, you know, and I am half Italian, I'm half Mexican, so it's one of those things where both sides of these cultures of my family are always close, you know. So that's kind of when you see the celebration of Dia de los Muertos and they're remembering somebody who died 20 years ago, like they still feel that closeness, not in a sad way, but they just feel like, hey, we remember your uncle because he was such a, he loved the Dodgers and he wouldn't miss a game, or the Lakers or whatever, all these great stories, But then, you look at other cultures and a lot of people are forgotten, and that's exactly where you say sad, and that's where the word sad plays. And I'm like, why are people forgotten? I mean, and I think that's why culturally, it brings people together. It forces you, but not in a bad way, in a very fun way, to remember people. And it's a beautiful thing. I never understood it when I was young, but because my grandmother was part Aztec, and there was a lot of that I learned throughout the histories of my family and all that, these traditions. And I'm like, oh, it's interesting. This, of course, they were against the church took over. Now it's part of the church tradition. There's so much that's evolved and has just been accepted over time that it's a beautiful thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's, and of course we cannot mention Halloween without mentioning haunted houses. Okay. Like you go to like now there's a lot of commercialized stuff. Like you go to Universal Horror Nights, you go to Knott's Scary Farm. You ever been to those?
I have, yes.
Well, how did you feel going through? Were they fun for you? Were they scary? Were they like what was the deal?
They were fun and scary, but I hate big crowds.
Right.
So after they're fun and scary in the moment, but getting me there is a challenge. But
yeah. No,
I do scream a lot. Yeah.
Do you know where those haunted houses got the origins from, or where they started?
Mm-mm.
You want to take a wild guess?
Where they got started?
Yeah.
Salem. I don't know.
Good guess. But no, but believe it or not, that those haunted house traditions to scare people started from the church.
Oh,
the churches, really? The Catholic Church would always have these festivals, in October, and they would use those to raise money, and those started, in those years, I believe it was the 60s or 70s, and then eventually that skipped over to Knott's Scary Farm, which started in 1970, I believe, or something like that. And they were the first ones to do it commercially, like do the big ones in theme park stuff, But yeah, it's crazy. It started out at church, and then people were like, oh, I got a basement, I got a house, and I could do this and I could do that. So people, today there are so many haunts, even just here in Los Angeles. And I know, for you guys listening out there, all over the world, I always tell people that the Halloween capital of the world is Los Angeles. And they look at me like, what? I'm like, there is so much to do here, Halloween, season. Not just the haunted houses. There's the theme parks. There's the home haunts. There's the parties. Everybody is throwing a party,
Yep.
There's the costumes, There's West Hollywood if you want to go march with 1 million people on the streets, There's, the trick-or-treating, both the affluent, nice neighborhoods and also in the inner cities, and you can get candy anywhere, so there's so much to do.
This is true, guys. This is true.
And of course, I'm not even mentioning the concerts. There's concerts Halloween night and sporting events Halloween night, and they all do their little things, and even like local businesses, if you have kids, go trick-or-treating during the day, right after school, before it gets dark. All businesses have candy, give out candy. It's a fun thing. And of course, I'm talking about pre-COVID times and hopefully post-COVID times, those are the fun things about Halloween here in this big city,
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was, going back to your history here, what was your favorite costume? Out of all the costumes you ever put on as an adult or kid, whatever, what was your favorite costume?
Catwoman. I was Catwoman one year, and I actually bought that one in Burbank. And when you were talking about that store, I went to a store for costumes in Burbank.
Okay.
That's why I was asking you if it was near Porto's.
Yeah, I know I know you went to Halloween Town.
I don't remember the name of it, but it was pretty fancy.
Yes,
and I was like, okay, I leveled up here. I liked it a lot.
So we're talking about Halle Berry, Catwoman? Or
maybe Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man, you picked the sexy one for sure.
I did. And I was working out. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling myself today. But I don't know what I did with it. I don't have it. So I must have thrown it out. I go through these like purging, speaking of purging, where I just get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was one of the best ones that I just was like, wow, this is really, really good.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was my favorite of all time.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then one other time I did like a 50s pinup where I really liked it. How the outfit came out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but definitely the Catwoman one was my favorite.
That's one of the things I love about that, since you mentioned Catwoman and the pinup, is that people get really creative with whatever they have or very little, and it looks so good, you know? And I think that's what I miss about Halloween is seeing everybody, because I used to work in an office, you know, in radio where we had hundreds of people that worked there, you know? And every Halloween, everybody dressed up, you know, and it was just like, oh, cool. Like you're Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. Like, oh, you're the creature from this movie. You know, you're like different people, you know, and I'm like, this is so cool how people do themselves up, you know?
Yeah, I was Mara the last time I dressed up.
Yeah, you were.
And I had the full body. So usually when I dress up, I like full, like I'm not showing skin. I like to cover up, but I go like I really, you know, I can sell it, right?
Oh, so you're not sexy Mira?
No, I was sexy Mara, but I don't show. What I'm saying is I can be sexy without showing shit, okay?
Hey.
I had the red wig. I bought a really expensive wig. I went and bought, what do you call that? The stick. Oh, I forgot the name of it.
The trident?
Yeah, and I couldn't find one that was gold, so I painted it. So the whole process of getting ready, me painting it, you know what I mean? I love it. I had a lot of fun that year. And I was really, really, really happy with the results. But I'm looking, maybe not this year, but maybe next year I'll go all out again if I feel comfortable. Because I definitely like getting into like characters, but not just the costume, but the accessories that come with it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited. And plus, you know, I feel like, I don't know I just want to live a little more now after all this pandemic and everything that I saw at work. I just want to live more.
Right.
So instead of, as I'm getting older, not living as much, I feel like I'm on overdrive now of wanting to do things, you know, as things permit. So I'm excited for the Halloweens to come. I'm going to be, if I make it 90 years old in my wheelchair and my walker, still dressing up. So
that's what it's for. It's to keep you, you know, young at heart, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this holiday. It's very different from everything else out there, you know? It's like, this is the one where you can always feel like a kid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that note, what is your favorite Halloween candy?
I'm not big on candy.
Come on, something.
Well,
as a kid, you know, there were houses that gave away the cheap candies. Then you found the ones that gave you chocolate, and then the ones that give you the full chocolate bars, and you were like, oh shit, you know. And then
yeah,
you know, so there was always something that you're like, oh, this is my favorite.
So I guess if I look back at the memories I have, maybe I'm looking at it from an adult. As a child, do you remember those gums? They were probably terrible with lead in them. They were pink.
The pink ones. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the package was like yellow, pink, and blue.
Blue, yes.
Yes. Okay, so with my child eyes, I used to love those, looking back. Because I think right now I'm like, I don't like candy.
Right.
But as a kid, yes, I used to, if I saw that and people handing them out, I would be like, oh my God, I love those. Yeah. And they're probably, like I said, they probably had a lead in them.
Of course.
But I loved them.
Yeah, those blow pops or whatever, you know, there's some that were, sometimes you'd get a lollipop with the bubble gum inside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
It's like, oh man, like those gums that you were describing, I would stick like 5 of those in my mouth and blow bubbles, and I'm like,
and they were like hard to chew at first. They were hard to chew,
yeah. Those are like the cheap ones, you know. If you got lucky, like somebody would give you like bubble yum or something, like some great bubble gum, you know, or something. But God, there was so much, you know. One of the. What is your favorite memory of going out trick or treating? Like what were you dressed as, and where did you go?
Honestly, I think as far as a kid, it was when I was Snow White.
Snow White.
Because for some reason that year I remember going trick or treating with my parents. I don't know. I don't think my brother was born yet. So I was an only child. And I just remember my teachers being there. It's just the one that stands out the most, which is interesting because I was really young. I must have been like 5 or 6.
Oh, nice.
But that's the Halloween I remember the most.
Did you ever get together like as neighborhood kids and just go out on your own? Like,
no.
See,
our parents were very like, we would get together, maybe meet our cousins, you know, right. But no, my parents would never.
See, that was the fun part of my experience is that I could say for a good number of years up until 85, it ended. And for those years, our whole neighborhood of kids, so I was like 10 years old, you know, and we would all get together, right? Whatever we dressed, that doesn't matter. We all met together. So we're a big group. We're like 25, 30 of us, right?
Wow.
And we met like right before the sun was going down. And that, you know, that would have been like 4 or 5 o'clock maybe, you know, in October, you know? And we started just going door to door in the whole neighborhood. And the neighborhood I lived in used to be called, well, still is called sort of, it's called Angelino Heights. It's like literally across the street from Dodger Stadium, across Sunset Boulevard. And it has a large number of Victorian homes. And when we were kids, those Victorian homes were not kept, you know, they were old and falling apart. So we didn't know. We didn't know who lived there. All we knew is that they were called haunted houses. And we would never go to the doors because there was nobody there, you know?
Yeah.
And back then there was always some old lady or old man that lived there, and then they would die, right? And the crazy thing about those homes today is that they're Victorian and they're historic. So they cannot be demolished, they cannot be changed. So if you drive through that neighborhood today, either Halloween or Christmas time, it's the most beautiful thing you will see.
Yeah.
And I'll drive past her once in a while, you know, and I'm just like, I'm so jealous because as a kid, those were the haunted houses. But as a group of friends, we had so much fun because we would come back and it would be before 10 p.m., you know? And I mean, we're talking sacks of candy, like just crazy amounts. And of course, the parents were like, nope, don't eat anything. We have to inspect it, you know?
Yeah.
And they would go through it. And, you know, those were the days where there was always the idea that somebody was going to poison somebody or put razor blades or something, you know? And incidents did happen here and there, but not like in my neighborhood, you know? So we got lucky. But the parents would definitely like, you know, put it aside and all inspect it. And I'm sure they got rid of some of it too. Like as a kid, you know, you wake up the next day, you know, like, I had more. I thought I had more, you know, but I'm pretty sure they probably gave it away or threw it out. Cause you know, as a kid, you don't need 5 tons of candy. It's going to rot your teeth and it's bad for your health, you know, and all that, you know? So, but the reason why that ended is because of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Once that happened, no more kids on their own. That was the end.
Yeah.
And that sucked because there was so much innocence up until 85, and then that changed everything.
Yeah, but, I remember.
You know, but Halloween's, I mean, as an adult, Halloween's pretty damn fun.
Yeah, it is. So definitely looking forward to see everybody's Halloween posts online. And just make it a fun, safe, you know, experience for everyone, right?
Right.
But definitely I know that that's something that the kids are looking forward to. So if you're not going out, at least dress up with your, you know, your family and make it, whether it's carving pumpkins, you know, make it a fun and safe Halloween this year.
Yeah, make good memories, even if you don't go out because of whatever's going on in the world, COVID, or you just can't. I love that people still dress up and just do it for photos, you know, for whatever, selfies, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Do it for that, because at least you're saying, hey, I'm in the spirit of the holiday. I want to take pictures and share it with the world, and just, you know, just to say you dressed up and ate some candy at home and watched some good scary movies.
Yeah, spread some happiness.
Yes. Spookiness.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Leonie, for especially on this episode. You really taught me a lot of things that I did not know. So.
No, it's one of those things where I didn't know a lot of these things because, like I said, I grew up thinking that, hey, we dress up to scare evil spirits. That's what everybody ever told me. And it's like, no, that's not it. Or the history of it, or where it came from, or the pranks and Black Halloween. I didn't know a lot of this stuff, and
yeah.
I do have to credit the person who I researched. And if you guys are interested, her name is Lisa Morton. She wrote a book called The History of Halloween, and it is the most fascinating thing I've ever read. So if you guys are interested, check out her book. It's everything Halloween. It's why we believe in witches and goblins and, turnips and jack-o'-lanterns and candy and dress up and pranks and all that. So it's a really cool read. I definitely recommend it.
Yes. So thank you guys for listening to this episode, and we hope to see you guys next time.
And one last thing, Mary, au revoir.
Oh, hey. Bye, everyone. That was episode 75 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.